I don't even know where to begin with this year's Daytona 500. There's a lot to unpack with this one. My hat. How's it going, everybody? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. And I'm still extremely energized, not only because I just chugged 2 cans of Dr. Pepper, so I got a lot of caffeine. Don't know why I did that, but because I just watched the finish to one of the greatest Daytona 500s I've ever seen. And I know some of you older fans might be like, whoa, pump the brakes, kid. Oh, this wasn't that great of a race. It was good, but hold on. I'm just telling you guys, from a pure competition standpoint, I expected these cars, with how bad they'd handled all week, to run single file for 80% of the race and only have a couple of exciting moments. The whole first half of the race, they were driving like it was 10 to go. I mean, shoot, coming to the end of stage 1, we had crazy blocking for second place. Not even for the lead, but for second place. Coming to the end of the stage, we had crazy blocking, a 5-6 car pile up, bunch of heavyweights taken out. I was like, what is going on? And then midway through stage 2, 2 of the fastest cars all day make contact, and another huge pile up. Every other contender is taken out. At that point, I'm like, boys, we're barely to halfway. What the heck are these other 100 laps gonna have in store for us? I didn't know where this thing was gonna go. 2 of the big 3 Penske heavyweights had already had big issues that day. One of them was out of the race. I didn't know what to expect there. Jimmy Johnson had wrecked out of Daytona once again. 75% of JGR was out of the race, and Denny Hamlin had penalties all day, so you didn't know what to expect there. By the halfway point of today's race, you felt pretty confident that an underdog was gonna get the win. And ultimately, the final couple of restarts at the end of the race, it came down to a veteran, Denny Hamlin, trying to battle with a lot of young drivers. Bubba Wallace, Aric Almirola, relatively young driver, Ryan Blaney, and others. Austin Dillon ultimately broke through to get the win. His second career win. He's won 2 races in his career now, and they've both been probably the 2 biggest races on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. He's like the next Jamie McMurray. So very exciting for him. I'll talk a little bit about the controversy surrounding the final battle for the lead. I'll talk a little bit about some of the other contenders. Let's jump right into this thing. I'm hyped. I mean, I'm telling you guys, this has been the greatest weekend of racing I've ever seen. Yesterday's Xfinity race, or on Saturday's Xfinity race, was maybe the best NASCAR race I've ever watched. It had a photo finish that was the closest finish on record in all of NASCAR history. I mean, oh my gosh, I didn't think anything could top that. And here we come to Sunday, and they're still doing crazy stuff. I'm not making any sense because I'm just all over the place. I'm just excited because even though my guy's retired, I'm excited because this season seems like it's going to be one for the ages. At least if we get what we've seen so far is even just a taste of what we can expect. I'm excited to go to Atlanta. Anyway, let's talk about Daytona. But throughout the afternoon, it wasn't too surprising. We saw the Penske Fords all have fast race cars. Ryan Blaney led the most laps in the race and ultimately got shuffled out at the very end and ultimately got caught up in a wreck at the very end of the race. That's why he did not win the race. However, he was fast. Joey Logano had speed at times. He had penalties that put him back. He was a lap down for a while, tried to come back. He ultimately got a decent finish still out of it. Brad Keselowski probably had the most consistently up day for Penske until he and Chase Elliott made contact and wrecked midway through the race like I talked about. So Penske had an up and down day, but all their cars had speed. JGR was actually surprisingly fast until more than half their cars got wrecked out of this thing. But Denny Hamlin finished 3rd despite coming back from being a lap down early on in the race. Eric Jones led laps early before being caught up in a wreck. Kyle Busch was running up front before he had tire issues. He had a bunch of wrecks. Daniel Suarez ran in the top 10 when he was wrecked. Gibbs looked fast. Truex looked better than he'd looked all week, which is encouraging because I talked in an episode a couple days ago about how I thought it was a little weird that Martin Truex Jr., the defending champion, had shown little to no speed all week. He was at least pretty good at Daytona, which makes me think they'll be good the rest of the season. Nothing to really worry about there. But ultimately, it was the expected heavyweight favorites who were fast, but it was not a favorite who won. Ultimately, like I said, drivers like Kyle Larson, Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Busch, Eric Jones, they're probably very happy to see that Daytona is in their rearview mirror. Now, the big thing that everyone was talking about at the end of this race was the final pass for the lead on the final overtime restart. On that restart, Denny Hamlin, like I said earlier, was the one lone established veteran driver who was leading mostly a group of young drivers behind him. He had the lead, did not get a very good push from behind on the restart. That allowed drivers like Aric Almirola and others to soar around the outside and ultimately kind of gain position on the final restart. Almirola was doing an impressive job blocking lanes. Remember, Aric Almirola has 1 career win in the Cup Series, and it was 3.5 years ago at Daytona, so he knows a thing or two about plate tracks. But then after some good jostling, 2nd, 3rd, 4th place, we had Bubba Wallace get behind RCR driver Austin Dillon in the 3 car. We had the 43 pushing the 3 car, 2 of the most legendary numbers in NASCAR, pushing each other to the front. Aric Almirola was basically a sitting duck. He put up an impressive block to the outside lane, which he had to do, but Austin Dillon had such a run coming. He hit him square in the back bumper, got Almirola a little squirrely, he hit him again in the bumper, hooked Almirola into the outside wall where he then wrecked in fiery flames, glad to see Almirola was okay from that, because that was a big hit given that he'd had recent injury issues. I'm glad he was okay. Austin Dillon drove off, got the win at the line. Bubba Wallace actually took second in his first ever Daytona 500, his first ever race as a full-time Cup Series driver. Very impressive for Bubba Wallace. So Austin Dillon got the win, but people were talking afterwards, was it a dirty move that he used to get the win? Anytime you wreck the guy in the lead on the last lap to get the win, people are going to raise these questions. And I'll be honest, given Austin Dillon's kind of fiery history, he's an aggressive driver, don't get me wrong, he's a good driver, but he's an aggressive driver. Given his history, I was a little reluctant to give him the benefit of the doubt at first. I kept waiting for them to show the replay so that I could really decide whether or not I was happy that Austin Dillon won the race. But after they showed the replay, I don't see how you can fault Austin Dillon in this issue. It's the Daytona 500, and he had a huge run, and Almirola made a good clean block on him, and he hit him once, but he hit him again. It was just an issue. It was a racing deal, and I think Aric Almirola afterwards, he had very good spirits about it. I mean, he was disappointed about losing the race, but he understood that he couldn't put the blame really on anybody. It was just one of those deals that, didn't work out too well for him. So I had a lot of respect for Aric Almirola after that, but ultimately, I don't see how you could put that much blame on Austin Dillon. I mean, after he hit Almirola first, sure, he could have backed off a little bit and let Almirola really hold back onto the race car, but at that point, his chances of winning the Daytona 500 would basically be lost. He did not have, there was less than half a lap to go. There's no way he was going to be able to regain enough momentum to actually make another charge at the leader. So Austin Dillon did exactly what he had to do. I have no problem with it. It was kind of the similar deal with Chase Elliott and Brad Keselowski earlier in the race. Now the difference there was that was middle of the race as opposed to the very end of the race, so it was maybe a little aggressive then. But when early in the race, when Chase Elliott went to make a move underneath the leader and block Keselowski, who was also making a move, they kind of got into each other. You couldn't really put any blame on one specific person. It was just a racing deal. I think that's kind of how we look at it with Austin Dillon and Aric Almirola here. And there's one thing I really hate. I hate it when people just chalk everything up to a racing deal, because when something bad happens to you, you want to be able to blame somebody, and when it's a racing deal, you can't blame anyone except just the scenario. So a racing deals suck because you can't really pin it back to any one mistake. No driver made a mistake there. Both were making the moves they had to make. Almirola had to block, and he did a good job of blocking. Austin Dillon had to make a run on him because he had a run, and it's a Daytona 500, and you're Austin Dillon in the 3 car. You got to make a move. So it was just a bad luck deal for Almirola there. I feel for him. I think he still finished 11th in the race, so I don't know, what can you say? Good points day, I guess, if nothing else. So give him that. In the end, I just have to say, I'm not a huge Austin Dillon fan. I've never been a big Austin Dillon fan, but I gotta say, he drove a good, clean race at Daytona this weekend. Kept his nose clean, kept out of trouble, made a strong move at the end of the race and did what he had to do to win the thing. And I have to say, it's really cool, especially given that Bubba Wallace finished second, to see the 3 car and the 43 car on the top 2 scoring positions on the pylon. That's really neat to see those 2 historic cars having success once again. I think it's interesting. You know what I found is very interesting is, a lot was made about Aric Almirola moving from Richard Petty to Stuart Haas, and now Bubba Wallace taking over that car. And a lot of the speculation has been, will Almirola succeed in the 10 car? Will Bubba succeed in the 43? And this weekend at Daytona, both looked really good. And I know it's a plate track, and plate tracks are very different than any other racetrack, but I gotta say, at least both those teams and those drivers seem to have confidence, and the teams seem to have speed. The cars seem to have speed. So I think it's interesting with this move that Stuart Haas and Richard Petty Motorsports made during the offseason might end up benefiting both organizations, which I did not really see coming, honestly. I didn't think either of those drivers would make the playoffs coming into the season, but after their runs at Daytona, and like I said, don't want to get too ahead of myself because it is Daytona, I might be rethinking that decision. Maybe one of those guys will sneak into the playoffs. We'll see who. We're going to Atlanta this next weekend, which will be the first, not to quote Kyle Busch, but it will be the first real racetrack, where we'll really see cars coming and going more as your traditional type racetrack, where your cars won't be able to rely on the draft. Handling will be more of an issue. Driving style will be more important. So we'll see how those 2 teams perform then. But I'll do another episode this week previewing Atlanta, talking more about fallout from the Daytona 500. I just want to make this quick reaction to the end of the video, or to the end of the race, because I thought it was one of the best Daytona 500s I've ever seen. I mean, I think back, the 2013 Daytona 500 was one of the worst Daytona 500s I've ever seen. I look back, 2014, 2016 was a pretty decent one, if I remember correctly. Even last year's was decent, but this year's Daytona 500 was outstanding. I was a little nervous after what I saw in the Clash, where they ran really aggressively for 30 laps, and then the last 30 laps they didn't really make a move at all. I was nervous that's what was going to happen this year, but it really didn't. It was a 200-lap race, and 160 of those laps they were racing extremely aggressively. They were 3 wide 3 laps into the race. obviously they paid the price for it because a lot of heavyweights got wrecked out, but it was fun to watch. It was very fun to watch, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. That's all I gotta say. This isn't a super. There's not a whole lot of substance in this episode here, but I swear I'll talk more about other stuff later in the week. I just wanted to get this out there because I had so much fun watching that race, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. For sure. So anyway, there you have it. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed hearing what I thought about the race. Let me know what you thought about the race in the comments, or you can follow me on Twitter at Dex Racing. I tweet all the time during races. I tweet during the week. You can tweet at me. I'll reply most of the time. I like reading what you guys have to see there, or here in the YouTube comment section, whatever, however it works. Thanks for watching, everybody. Share these videos with the NASCAR fans in your life. If you have family members or friends somewhere who like NASCAR or are interested in racing at all, point them to this channel and maybe they'll enjoy this as well. I appreciate all the support I get. Thanks for 60,000 subscribers, guys. I don't know if I've actually talked about it yet, but I had 60,000 subscribers a few days ago, and it's amazing. I can't believe it. And I wouldn't be here without all the support from all of you guys. Some of you guys have been watching for years, and that I'm impressed. Thank you for all that. So yeah, I'll look forward to more Out of the Groove this week. There's a NASCAR parody up last week. You can check that out as well about Kyle Busch. And that's all I got here. Yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the Daytona 500, because I sure did. It was a good one. Very good one.